right, so we know that there are major components to the application, right? Everybody freaks out over the LSAT, but there are other things that should probably get as much attention as this one test, because the application is not one thing, it's a combination of a number of different components. So, Akeisha, if you could just start us out and talk about at a high level, what are the application components, and then we'll jump right in and give you some more detail on each one of those.
Yeah, so let me start by saying each school differs a bit in terms of what their application looks like, but there are a number of application components that are pretty universal. So every school is going to ask for, usually every school is going to ask for certain things. So some of the things that you can expect to have to submit no matter where you're applying are going to be an actual application. So that varies from school to school with regard to the questions that they ask. But usually that includes questions like, what's your name, where do you live, etc. Most schools are going to require you to submit a personal statement. I know students often freak out about that, and we'll talk about that a bit more. And then all schools are going to require you to submit some sort of standardized test score. And so the LSAT is the standardized test score that most schools are familiar with, all schools use. However, there are a number of schools over the past few years that have started accepting the GRE. And so depending on where you're applying, you are going to take either the LSAT or the GRE. And those are the parts of the application that are pretty universal in addition to a transcript. So any school you apply to is also going to want proof that you went to undergraduate university and a copy of all your grades. So that's your transcript. There are some optional components to applications. Some schools will accept additional essays, where that's a diversity statement, an essay about hardships overcome, etc. So those are some things that you may find at different schools depending on where you're going to. And also letters of recommendation. That's something that pretty much every school is going to ask for. And so that's a pretty universal component of your application. And some schools, depending on where you're applying, are going to expect you to participate in an interview. And so those are kind of just from a high level perspective. Those are things that you should think about when you're thinking about what is required to actually apply to a law school.